And there he was, stranded along the side of the road without fuel. The fuel gauge was still showing half full, but the tank was empty. You may ask yourself how an issue with the fuel sender leads to a replacement of the complete fuel tank. The fuel tank was leaking and had to be replaced. Later on, I will explain what caused the leak, but let's first look at what is needed to swap the fuel tank. In preparation of the repair, we could not find a single video showing us how to remove the fuel tank of an NC Miata. On the NA and NB, the complete rear subframe must be removed for this task, but fortunately that's not the case for the NC Miata, but it cannot stay in place either. Many parts need to be removed before you can get the fuel tank out. We ended up buying a new to us fuel tank, which we are now installing under the car. So as part of the process, we first removed some bracing underneath the tunnel of the car, followed by the power plant frame, then the drive shaft, and then the exhaust. But before we could remove the exhaust, we first had to lower a brace underneath the gearbox, and I will show that in a separate image, to make sure that we could actually clear that brace and pull the exhaust out of the car. Then in the rear we have these two braces that connect the rear subframe and the chassis of the car, and we also removed this charcoal canister. Inside the boot we took out the carpet and boot liners to get access to the area where we could remove the two hoses near the top of the fuel tank. Behind the seats we removed some trim pieces to unplug the electrical connector, as well as the fuel line at the top of the fuel pump. What remained underneath the car was one of the hoses from the tank to the charcoal canister, and once that was disconnected we removed the 4 nuts or bolts that hold the tank in place. Then we started emptying the tank to get out of the tank what was still remaining in the fuel tank. So we have a number of jerry cans here. We have connected a 12 volt over here on this side and a ground on the other side, and when we hook that up to our battery, then we could pull all of the fuel out of the tank and into the jerry cans. So our next step will be to install the replacement fuel tank underneath the car. We're currently looking in the direction of the gearbox and the exhaust manifold. That's where the brace is still on the car. We did lower it a bit to get some clearance when removing the exhaust. You can see these rubber blocks underneath the gearbox. They maintain the distance between the gearbox and that brace. You also need to remove the tension from the e-brake cables. This is best done at the e-brake handle in the interior. Then the cables can be released and moved to the back of the car, away from the fuel tank. The rear subframe is held in place with 6 nuts on studs in the chassis. Loosen these nuts to lower the rear subframe just enough to get the fuel tank out. The subframe will rest on the nuts. The bolts you see are those from the braces and those that connect the PPF to the diff. Installation of the parts is just the reverse order of the removal process. Another tip for someone who wants to do this by himself: label the different lines to the charcoal canister so you know exactly which line should go where. To give you an idea of the costs for this operation, if you would bring this to a Mazda dealer and would get yourself a new fuel tank and have it installed, that would be around 2,000 euros. If you settle for a used fuel tank with them, then you will get it done for 1,100 euros, was the quote. But in this case, we managed to buy a used fuel tank for 85 euros, refurbish it a bit, did some coating, protective coating on it, and install it in a couple of hours. We started this morning. We just had a break for lunch, so you could say that within 4 hours you can have it under the car, even if it's your first time doing so. Now it is time to explain why the tank started leaking. The fuel pump and fuel sender are located on top of the fuel tank behind the seats. Replacing this part is not very complicated, but the 8 bolts with a Phillips head are not ideal. Therefore, the owner decided to replace these bolts for Allen head bolts. After removing the fuel tank, we found this Allen key and one of the bolts as silent witnesses on top of the fuel tank. Replacing these fasteners sounds like a good idea, right? But what happens if these bolts are slightly longer? The bolts go into a ring that is spot welded on top of the tank. A longer bolt can reach the metal layer underneath and then start pulling up the ring and create a gap through which fuel can leak out and evaporate in the interior. That is probably what happened. Several attempts to fix the leak failed. We found a used fuel tank, but it didn't look great. And although you would hardly ever notice that once it's in the car, it's still a good idea to preserve it and make it look better. As always, if you have any questions or remarks, please leave them in the comment section below. Like the video and consider subscribing to the channel. Thanks.